Prime Minister, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera. I want to start off by saying that the last time we met at the end of 2009, you said and told me Thailand is a very forgiving society and maybe we could find a solution when I asked you about the possibility of Mr. Thaksin coming back. It's no longer the case, is it? Things have moved well beyond that.
Well, you know, despite the conflicts and the violence that have taken place over the last two months or so, you still see aspects of Thai society where people are ready to rise up to the challenges. They're trying to build a new future. Only a few days ago, you witnessed the people of Bangkok all coming out to clean the streets where the protests had been. You see people looking for ways to help those who have been affected by the demonstrations. The parliamentary process is back on track. So in many ways, I think despite what had happened, there is still that determination for the whole of the country, the Thai people, to seek a way forward that can cater to the needs of everybody.
But in many ways, I mean, the legacy of what happened on May the 19th when the army went in to break up the protests in the center of Bangkok by the red shirt movement has polarized opinion and the political landscape even further in Thailand. That's clear, isn't it?
I should point out to the facts first. On May the 19th, the army did not move in to the center of the protests. All it did was to secure off an area where previously there had been grenades launched to various places from inside the protest area. And the leaders of the demonstrations decided to call off the rally. So it wasn't a case of the army moving in to crush the demonstrations. That is clear. But what followed clearly was that there was arson, and there was some violence that took place, all of which, of course, will be investigated, and the truth will come out. So despite what had happened, and I know that there will be feelings that still run high on both sides, I think when we face up to the truth, when the government carries on with its policy of transparency, then I think it will be possible for these wounds to heal.
Take me through the rundown up to May the 19th. The center of Bangkok had been effectively just closed off. All normal life had come to a stop because of the protests for weeks, in fact months. That's right. Take me through the thought patterns in your government that took you to May the 19th.
Sure. Ever since the protests began, what we recognized was that there are people who have legitimate grievances. They may feel that there is disparity. They may feel that they want some changes to the constitution. They may want a change of government, and they are entitled to hold peaceful protests. Now, when they began to occupy the center of Bangkok, the court had ruled that the protests were no longer legal. But the government was very mindful that we don't want to see losses of lives. And I myself personally engaged in rounds of negotiations with the leaders of the protest. And unfortunately, they were called off by the protest leaders. For me, it was clearly under the guidance of former Prime Minister, who didn't want the negotiations to be successful.
Thaksin.
That's right. And then we still continue to try to find a way by which we could reach some kind of agreement.
Take me through that meeting with the leaders of the red shirt movement, where you made a number of offers to end the stalemate and end the protest, of which was calling for, you know, a timetable, a roadmap towards elections. At what point in the negotiations did you feel that this wasn't going anywhere?
Well, I thought it had gone well at first. Interestingly, if you recall, because the negotiations were actually televised on both days. On both occasions, they were called off after a phone call to one of the leaders of the protest. And it doesn't take much to figure that clearly somebody else is behind these leaders, and signal that they didn't want the negotiations to succeed.
You're talking, of course, about Thaksin Shinawatra being
Well, I
those-
think from all the intelligence and all the sources that we have listened to, it seems to be comes to the same point. That,
Why though? Why would that be? I mean, because he's excluded from any of the...
Because basically what the government is prepared to concede is all about issues concerning the interests of the country. And his own personal interests weren't addressed. That he didn't get much from these kinds of deal, and therefore he wasn't prepared to accept it.
It's wrong, though, to paint the entire thrust of the red shirt movement as just being all about getting Thaksin Shinawatra back into...
No, that's my point. My point is that you do have a large group of people, as I said, with grievances. But unfortunately, behind these people, you had a group of people who were prepared to use violence and weapons, and behind that, you have somebody who has other agenda. So it was unfortunate because what we tried to do was to separate the legitimate grievances, the masses who had come to demonstrate peacefully, from these people. And it was very, very difficult to do so. When the reconciliation plan was offered, the leaders at first decided to accept. We thought we had succeeded. And then again, it fell apart because they would not call off the rallies.
But then why describe those leaders of the red shirts that you were negotiating with, the vast bulk of them, as terrorists? And also, I mean, using language which takes this whole debate into a different trajectory, because it effectively means that you can't negotiate with them now.
The issue of terrorism is according to our criminal code, which is exactly in line with the UN Charter. The definition of terrorism is used in our criminal law as it is used in the UN Charter. And the behaviors of these people, as facts became clear, fit into that. That's why they're charged with terrorism.
But who do you negotiate with now?
Well, what happens now, and even before May the 19th, was the way we did it was we had a number of groups who were willing to act as intermediaries, who were trying to gauge what kind of positions would be accepted by all sides. And that's what we came to in terms of the plan and offer of early elections. Once they were rejected, we had no choice. We had to enforce the law. But once again, because we are mindful first of the need to make sure that there will be minimum losses, and two, that we were up against people with weapons, we decided to cordon the area and to set up checkpoints. That's when a lot of violence took place, not by any proactive or any action of the army as such. They were actually stationed.
But Prime Minister, you'd said that your government was going to take action against the protesters. You'd made that clear.
No, what I said was that we wanted the protest to end. And the way we did that, mindful first of all that we would not like to see further losses, and two, that we were up against armed groups of people, we decided to tighten the perimeters, cordon the protest areas to stop people from joining in and to cut off some supplies. And we were actually succeeding because the number of demonstrators was substantially reduced during those days. But a lot of violence took place, not from any action on the part of the security forces. Rather, it was groups of armed people actually attacking the checkpoints around the area. You will notice that between the 14th of May to 17th, 18th, 19th, no losses occurred in the protest area. It was the area outside where you had these groups of armed people attacking the army checkpoints, where there were clashes and led to loss of lives. It was also during the same period that we also warned people that it wasn't just soldiers or policemen who were targets, but actually innocent people, journalists, foreigners, volunteer workers, and indeed a lot of clashes when they took place, these people were actually killed. So I think what they were trying to do was to put pressure on the government through the losses of lives, which is why on the 19th of May, we decided that we had to seal off that area where we knew a lot of weapons were stored and grenades were launched from, and actually tighten the perimeter even further. And once we put on that pressure, the leaders of the protest called the rally off.
Did you give the order to use live rounds?
We were very clear under what circumstances live bullets would be used. First of all, they would be in self-defense. They would be used to protect lives, and they can only be used at clear targets where you had people who were armed, who were about to cause damages in terms of lives, launching grenades or having actual clear weapons in their hands. So these were the circumstances under which the live bullets were used.
One of the legacies for Thailand after the events of May the 19th are twofold. I mean, one is just the international reaction to what's happened. These pictures of the clashes in downtown Bangkok, were beamed around the world. And that affects your government and its international standing. But secondly, it has deepened the level of political polarization in Thailand between your government and the red shirts and far beyond it. How do you address those grievances?
Well, first of all, the internal situation. The government has every intention to pursue the reconciliation plan. That is still what we want to put forward. And we try as best we can to engage people, all colors, all regions, to take part in this process. And at the same time, we will allow due process of law to operate. We will allow transparency so that people can become aware of what actually took place.
But it's hard to have reconciliation in a situation.
I'm not pretending it's easy, but we will demonstrate our sincerity. We will demonstrate our determination to do so. And I do this, despite criticisms from groups who are very much opposed to the red shirts, because I said all along that the government has to make sure that we address the grievances of everybody, of every single Thai. And that's what we intend to do. It's not going to be easy, but I believe it can be done.
But does that include Mr. Thaksin Shinawatra? If he is the source of all this problem,
but we have to address legitimate grievances. We cannot allow somebody to stay above the law. We're not treating Mr. Thaksin in any special way. We're treating him as we would any other Thai. If you've broken the law, you have to accept the consequences and be held responsible for your illegal acts. Now, as far as the international community is concerned, we very much appreciate the understanding of the international community. We've had very helpful statements from governments ranging from the US, the EU, and a lot of our friends and allies. The US Senate passed a very, very productive resolution supporting the reconciliation plan. The EU does the same. So I think there is an understanding among the international community what we were up against. We had to enforce the law, but at the same time we had done so with utmost restraint.
But Thailand is left in a very precarious position now because one of the deepening sense of grievances amongst the red shirts is the idea that the Bangkok elite is what is underpinning your governments, that somehow the red shirt movement, which is made up of the provincial poor largely, their grievances have not been addressed.
Well, I don't think that's...
but there is a growing regionalism to this crisis that is dangerous for Thailand.
That's not quite an accurate description. First of all, I don't think that you could say that there was a true urban-rural divide. If you took, and you could see from the polls of the support for protests and for what the government had done, it's not immediately clear. Yes, there are some regional differences, and you see that in all countries in terms of political support. But what the government intends to do in our reconciliation plan, and part of which is to really address the issue of disparities. And the urban people, the Bangkok people, do not deny the need to give opportunities to rural people, and that's the basis from which we work from. And therefore, I think it's possible for us to take this forward to make sure that we can engage and include everybody in our reconciliation plan.
You yourself, your government, your party, needs to hold elections for your own legitimacy, don't you? Because there is this sense, and this is an accusation against you, that you were effectively brought to power by an army coup, and that the elected government of Mr. Shinawatra was booted out in that coup.
The coup took place, what was it now, four years ago. We've had 3 governments since. And my government came through, was set up exactly by the same process that the 2 previous Thai governments were set up. They happened to be supporters of Thaksin, but they had trouble because they were engaged in election fraud and they were punished by the courts. And a parliamentary majority put this government together. This government has been in power for almost a year and a half. It has had this majority in parliament for almost a year and a half. It has already come through one censure motion.
But you don't have a popular mandate.
Well, I would say more people voted for the parties that are in government now than the supporters of Thaksin. So why is it illegitimate? And the coalition governments happen in a parliamentary system. That's what's happening in the UK right now.
What do you think will happen next? In terms of, as you said, Bangkok is coming back to life. The raucous traffic is back to its usual levels. I mean, there is a sense of normal life coming back, but there isn't a sense of normal life coming back to the politics of this country. How do you, and what do you plan to do in order to try and at least stabilize the political divisions?
Well, we still have to be mindful of the risk of violence, and that's what we will do. At the same time, as far as politics is concerned, just a couple of days ago we had the budgetary process. It's gone through the lower house, so Parliament has functioned. Over the next few days we'll have a censure motion. So again, a parliamentary process to bring accountability and transparency to what has happened. So in that sense, the parliamentary process is holding together. Obviously, the differences between the parties are wide, and we need to do all we can to try to bridge that gap. And again, I would refer back to the reconciliation plan that I've proposed. During the budget debate, I think some members of the opposition parties have echoed the need to pursue that plan, and that's what we intend to do.
But you don't believe for a minute that the thrust and the depths of feeling within the red shirt movement has gone away? I mean, this is not the end of the affair.
No, and that's why I say that we continue to have to address the grievances of people who have joined the red shirt movement, and the plan is intended and designed to address those.
One of the things that people have said has introduced a level of political danger for Thailand is the use of the term anti-monarchists, which have been made towards the red shirt movement, that somehow they are disrespectful of the king, that they are anti-monarchy. That was a bad mistake, wasn't it,
let me make this clear. When we talk about people who are terrorists, when we talk about people who have engaged in anti-monarchy movements, we're not talking about the majority or vast majority of the red shirt people. We've never said that. What we've said is that these elements exist. They have used the red shirt people as a shield, as a front. That's why we're separating these elements from the red shirt movement. We will reach out to people who have joined the red shirt movements to address their legitimate grievances, while at the same time we have to deal with these elements according to the law. That's what we've said, and that's what we intend to do.
You sound very much in a fairly uncompromising mood with regard to the leadership of the red shirt movement. Would that be a fair description? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any sense of...
I don't think any leader in a democracy, in a country where there has to be rule of law, can compromise with people who intend to use violence and illegal means to achieve political ends. But I am willing, and I have shown my willingness to compromise with people who think differently politically. I think that's what democracy is about.
And you don't have a feeling that somehow the worst is behind you, or do you?
I think we have to be cautious. We know that there are huge challenges ahead of us, but I still believe that the fundamental strength of this country, of the Thai people, will make sure that we can come through.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility for the loss of life and the actions that your government took in contributing to that?
Personally, and I'm sure I speak also for people who've worked with me, we all regret the losses that have happened. But we will have a thorough investigation of what has happened, and we will do whatever is appropriate once the truth becomes clear. We have a number of processes by which we can get at the truth. Parliament will take me to task on Monday and Tuesday. The Human Rights Commission is working on this. I intend to set up an independent commission to look into the facts. So I think it would be more appropriate once the truth and the findings of these commissions come out to begin to talk about who should be held responsible for these losses.
Do you regret in many ways that you didn't take action much earlier, before the protesters had grown larger, more vociferous, and had effectively taken over parts of downtown Bangkok?
It would be very difficult because any action could also have led to losses of lives.
But you let
The
it get...
problem was that I think nobody could have foreseen that there would be such a large group of people who were armed, and the extent of the amount of weapons that they had in possession, and the lengths by which they would go to use violence to achieve their means. That was the basic problem. But once we were up against it, we did all we can to exercise restraint and to make sure that whatever we did, whatever we decided, would lead to minimum losses.
I started the interview by asking you, when I last spoke to you, your message to Thaksin Shinawatra was, come back, this country is a very forgiving place. What would your message to him be now?
It would still be the same. He has to accept the consequences of his action, and I'm sure that Thai society is always a forgiving society.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.